Hello. Welcome to Sabbath School with Branch Davidians. I'm Ed, and I'm here with my wife, Mary.
Hello, we're excited you're joining us today.
Yes, thanks for listening. We present or expound on a principle or belief related to the SDA Sabbath School Quarterly each week. This quarterly is entitled On Death, Dying, and the Future Hope. This week's study is entitled Resurrections Before the Cross. The lesson for Sabbath reads, quote, "The first resurrection was of Moses." Jude 9 and Luke 9, 28 through 36. During Israel's monarchy, the son of the widow of Zarephath, 1 Kings 17, 8 through 24, and the Shunammite's son, 2 Kings 4, 18 through 37, also were resurrected. Christ, when here in the flesh, resurrected the son of the widow of Nain, Luke 7, 11 through 17. Jairus' daughter, Luke 8, 40 through 56, and then Lazarus, John 11. Except for Moses, all these people were raised as mortals who eventually would die again. These cases also confirm the biblical teaching of the unconsciousness of the dead. Close quote, Sabbath School Quarterly Lesson, Saturday, October 22nd, 2022.
So today we wanted to talk about the unconscious state of the dead. In this lesson, it is pointed out that Jesus uses the metaphor for sleep in talking about death. But in what way is death like sleeping? Well, the main thing is inactivity and unconsciousness. But at least for death prior to the second death, there is also the fact that sleep is usually followed by awakening, a fitting parallel to resurrection. Of course, this is all metaphor. It's just an analogy from an experience we understand to explain something we have not experienced ourselves. But where do you draw the line with the metaphorical similarities? Some SDAs tend to think that in death, there is some part of us that is still out there, albeit unconscious and with God, waiting to be revitalized. Now, I'm not saying that every SDA or even most SDAs think this way, but I did, and I know others do. I may have had this due to misunderstanding Ecclesiastes 12:7, which, in some translations, reads, quote, "Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it," close quote. So I think I kind of thought that since the spirit was said to go somewhere, then I must have an unconscious spirit inside me that sleeps, if you will, when I die, and that God takes it out of me and stores it with him in heaven for later revitalization. Basically, I thought I still had some sort of other part of me besides my material body. But really, the word translated spirit here just means breath. And it is just saying that when we die, the breath we had on loan from God, as it were, is no longer ours. It's just God's again. And in Ecclesiastes 9, it specifically makes the point that the same thing happens to our breath as to all animals. Literally, it joins the rest of the air, and since all the air belongs to God, exhaling for the last time is, in that sense, giving our breath back to God. But again, it's just breath getting mixed in with the rest of the air. I think I thought that since unconsciousness is mainly a description of the state of the mind, and in sleep, the main thing that happens is that our mind turns off for a while, that whatever it is that my mind is still around somewhere.
Now, Martin Luther had this similar thought. He thought that at death, the soul slept, not with God in heaven, but in the grave. He wrote, quote, "Thus after death, the soul goes to its bedchamber and to its peace. And while it is sleeping, it does not realize its sleep, and God preserves indeed the awakening soul. God is able to awake Elijah, Moses, and others, and so control them, so that they will live. But how can that be? That we do not know. We satisfy ourselves with the example of bodily sleep, and with what God says, it is a sleep, a rest, and a peace. He who sleeps naturally knows nothing of that which happens in his neighbor's house, and nevertheless, he still is living, even though, contrary to the nature of life, he is unconscious in his sleep. Exactly the same will happen also in that life, but in another and better way." Close quote, Martin Luther, Interpretation of the First Book of Moses, Writings, Volume 1.
From this quote, we can see that Luther really took the sleep analogy quite far, believing that in death, like sleep, we are unconscious but still living, just unconscious of our sleep. His philosophy holds that in man there is a soul that at death simply becomes unconscious.
But Roswell Cottrell, the early SDA pioneer that Ellen White commissioned to write the Intro to Spiritual Gifts, Volume 1, summarized the SDA view like this, quote, "We do not teach that the soul sleeps with the body in the grave. we believe that man is a unit, that soul and body are not separate beings, but that it takes the whole body, soul, and spirit, if you please, to constitute a living man or soul. The living man became subject to death on account of sin, no part being exempt, and there is no remedy but the resurrection. If the dead rise not, then they that have fallen asleep in Christ are perished. See 1 Corinthians 15, 16 through 18, close quote. That's R.F. Cottrell, Man Made in the Image of God, Advent Review and Sabbath Herald, November 7, 1865.
So here, Cottrell makes clear that the SDA pioneers did not believe in what some call soul sleep. No, in death, the person actually, yet gradually, ceases to exist. We are our bodies, and when we die, we decompose into dirt, and thus we cease to exist. Or to state it more how ancient authors put it, dirt we are, and to dirt we will return. See Genesis 3:19, Psalm 103:14, and Ecclesiastes 3:18 through 20. And Cottrell points to Paul's statement in 1 Corinthians 15, 16 to 18, to evidence from Scripture that death is equivalent to totally perishing. There is no soul that exists within or apart from the body, period. See our study, Dirt You Are, Israelite Anthropology, linked in the description.
There was an excellent pamphlet published in 1882 by the Review and Herald Publishing House entitled Matter and Spirit by D.M. Canright, but was originally published by James White in the Signs of the Times in 1879 under the title, Can God Organize Matter to Think? That makes this even more clear. We quoted from it recently in this study entitled, Are Thoughts Immaterial?, which we will link in the description. Today's study is very similar to that one, but focuses more on the idea of an immaterial something going back to God when we die.
This pamphlet, Matter and Spirit, really shows the profoundness of my error in thinking that I had a spirity part of me, separate from my material body, that animates me and that becomes unconscious and goes to heaven when I die. The pamphlet is speaking to an audience that believes there is a spirit that lives on after death as a thinking, functioning entity, but I found it applied to me too, even though I didn't believe the spirit was thinking and functioning after death. I thought it was unconscious, but still in existence somewhere.
Before we look at some of Canright's arguments, let's look at the title of this work as it was published in the Signs of the Times. Can God Organize Matter to Think? The simple answer, yes. Basically, the SDA pioneers understood consciousness to be simply a function of matter in a specific organization. They did not believe consciousness to be a function of a spirit or soul within us. They believed and argued quite convincingly that upon death, the matter of the body loses this structure, and that the same brain matter organized in a different way after death can no longer think or feel anything. Death is all about matter losing its organizational structure and functionality. Now, the decaying body is still made up of the same materials as before, i.e. dirt, but the materials are no longer organized in a way that produces consciousness and thought. When death commences, we perish. Our only hope is the resurrection. See our study, Resurrection, Our Only Hope of Future Life.
Okay, let's read. Canright argued, quote, but to the question, can God organize matter so that it can think? We answer yes. But our opponents say, a stone, a stick, dust, water, iron. These are material. They have no intelligence. Hence, matter cannot think. True, matter in these particular forms cannot think, but it does not follow that it cannot in a different form or when differently organized. A ball of snow is very white and very cold. It is material. Shall I therefore conclude that all matter must be white and cold? A piece of coal is just as material as the snowball, and yet it is very black, just opposite in color from the snow. Again, burning coal is very hot, just the opposite of the cold snow. Has it ceased to be material? Lift that block of lead. How very heavy. Now handle those feathers. How light. They seem to be just the opposite of each other, yet both are matter. One form of matter is sour, as a lemon, another is sweet, as sugar. Indeed, the various combinations of matter may be said to be almost infinite, yet it takes only a very few original or primary elements to make all these. As a side note, now Canright's going to quote from a book called Wells' Natural Philosophy. He quotes, the number of the elements or simple substances with which we are at present acquainted is 64. These substances are not all equally distributed over the surface of the earth, Most of them are exceedingly rare and only known to chemists. Some 10 or 12 only make up the great bulk, or mass, of all the objects we see around us. Again, that's Wells' Natural Philosophy, pages 11 and 12. Canright continues, but God has so variously arranged and organized these few elements that many forms seem the very opposite of others, as we have mentioned, as heat and cold, black and white, light and heavy, sour and sweet, and yet all are material. That's from Matter and Spirit, page 9, paragraphs 1 and 2.
Canright goes on to make many arguments along this line, that a few basic substances combine in different combinations to make all kinds of things, even things that are quite opposite of each other, and even when things are composed of the exact same elements like water, ice, and steam, the configuration or organization of these elements can give them quite different characteristics. Canright wrote, quote, "Our pleaders for immateriality see such a difference between matter in its higher forms, as when organized into an angel or the higher classes of men, and the grosser forms of matter, as seen in the lower animals, plants, and minerals, that they conclude these cannot both be material. But we fully believe that the whole difference lies in the quality and superior organization of the matter which the Creator has given one over the other." Close quote, page 28, paragraph 2.
So the pioneers were strict materialists. That is, they believed that the only thing that has existence is matter, physical stuff. See our study, The Materialist Foundation, a Forgotten Foundation of Adventism, linked in the description. They believed that there is no non-physical part of us, and that the mind is simply the activity of the material brain that we call thinking. The brain itself has the capacity to think, and all a capacity is a configuration or state of an object that gives it the potential to do particular actions. Again, it is the organization of matter that gives our living brains the capacity to think. Thinking is just an action of our physical brain. Not unlike digestion is the action of our stomach, among other organs. There is no separate us that is our mind. We are, as Cottrell said, a single unit. I am my body, composed of various parts, each organized differently to carry out different functions, including thinking, moving, digesting, and everything that is a part of living. If I die, I, as a strictly material being, will disorganize to a point where I can no longer exist as a distinct organized object. All that makes me up will become reassimilated into ordinary dirt. Death really will be the end of me. Bodily resurrection really is our only hope of a future existence.
Thank you for staying with us till the end. We invite you to visit our website, www.bdsda.com, to learn more about who we are and, just as important, who we are not. Please join us each week as we will continue to offer new and interesting insights for your Sabbath School studies.
And if you want to keep up with our new studies as they're published, we recommend subscribing. We're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on plenty of other podcast apps. Links for subscribing are in the description.
God bless.
Many blessings.